Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast, episode number 67. Brian Stevens, the ultimate bow hunter. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hi, this is Sean Lupkel with Heartland Bow Hunter.
Hey, this is Michael Hunsucker with Heartland Bow Hunter.
And you're listening to my favorite podcast on iTunes, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hey, this here's Bad Bob with Funny Hunting Songs, and you're listening to my good buddies Jay and Dusty on the most amazing podcast that's ever been podcasted out there. It's the Big Buck Registry, and it's the Big Buck Podcast. Hey, thanks for tuning in. You guys are going to love this week's show. Hey, this is Kevin Blake Weldon with Funny Hunting Songs, and you're listening to my favorite duo, Jay and Dusty, right here on the Big Buck Registry, and this is the Big Buck Podcast. You guys don't want to miss this show. It's going to be awesome.
Hey, welcome to the show. This is Jay Sky, your host of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. And I've got another big buck over here. What's going on, Dusty?
Another big buck. You know, hunting season's kicked off here in Ohio, and man, I tell you, I'm back to normal Dusty.
Big buck everywhere, big buck.
Absolutely, you know, and chasing a dream. That's all you can do is hope for a big monster to come underneath you. It's not all about the rack, but, you know, it seems like the farther I get into all the social media and coverage that we do about hunting, it's kind of expected that we harvest a nice mature animal, and that's what I'm looking to do.
Yep. What do you think Fred Bear would do with social media if he still had it today, or if he had it back then?
He would probably be like more of a legend now than he is.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because he was kind of progressive back then, so I'd imagine he'd be engaging in social media as we speak.
No, absolutely. You know, he'd be huge in social media.
What a great dude. Speaking of Fred Bear and bow hunters, we got another very good bow hunter joining us today on the Big Buck Registry.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and thanks to Kenyon Bakeson for the contact and getting us hooked up with Brian.
Yeah, thank you to Kenyon. Brian Stevens is joining us on the Big Buck Podcast today. So we're going to learn a lot about hunting in Georgia. We're going to learn about his big Alberta buck. And we push him pretty hard for some tips and tricks that you can take into the field yourself. So you'll probably want to tune in and listen to this whole show. What do you say, Dusty? Should we get Brian?
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. Brian Stevens, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great this evening. I appreciate you guys having me.
Hey, man, we're psyched to talk to you. You're hunting some big whitetails with a bow and arrow. We think that's pretty cool.
Listen, love it. You know, I've hunted since I was a little kid, grew up on a big cattle ranch down in Florida. So hunting's been a big part of my life. And, you know, the past 15 years or so, we've gotten really eat up with the bow hunting side of things. So, we love it.
That's awesome. No, that's the best. I love bow hunting. I love everything about it. So tell us where you're at right now.
I'm in North Georgia, live in just north of Atlanta, about 45 minutes in the kind of north metro area of Atlanta.
Gotcha. So you're in and around the Atlanta area. Do any like urban hunting, or is it all out in the country hunting?
Yeah. You know what, guys, there's some really big deer in North Georgia. There's some big deer in Georgia in general, but there's some pockets in North Georgia that there's some big suburban deer. Actually, in 2007, I shot 193-inch non-typical, and at that time, it was the largest non-typical that ever been shot with a bow. And then, believe it or not, just about less than 30 days later, a good buddy of mine, Jay Maxwell, shot a 231 non-typical. So he and I, between the two of us, we broke like a standing 30-year record. But there's some giants that roam some of these little pockets of woods. And the hard part is that, you know, the development's pushing a lot of these little sweet spots out, but there's still some really good deer roaming some of the little pockets of woods in North Georgia.
Gotcha. The habitat is what you're talking about. And it's kind of
the habitat, absolutely.
Trimming down, but what's left remaining, that's where the big ones are hanging out.
That's it, you know, and the key thing about it is that it's the age. There's good genetics here, but a lot of these deer that are these really giants that are being shot, they're getting a chance to get to 4 and 5 years old, and they're, and that's when they're really starting to reach their potential and really put on the bone in the inches. And so when you run across a lot of these deer, they've got some age, and that's, if you just let them grow up a little bit, and a trophy's a trophy for anybody. But if you are able to let some of these deer walk and get some age on them, that's when we really start to see some of these giants in some of these suburban areas of North Georgia.
That's beautiful. I love the concept of suburban hunting. It's kind of neat, a little different. Go ahead.
It is, and I tell you what else I love about it is, we film a lot for our show and everything, but I tell you, I spend a lot of time with my boys, and I hunt with them and film for them, mm-hmm. And for me, just they'll shoot some does, and so the management piece of it, and they'll shoot some bucks, and I love that part of it too, and that gives us the opportunity to do a little bit of hunting in between our crazy lives and all the sports, to be able to get out and do some hunting with these guys and spend time with them. I cherish that as much as some of these, bigger hunts that we do and that we film for. And that's another nice thing, is I don't have to travel 2 hours, that I can be, 10, 15 minutes and I'm hunting with my boys.
That's awesome. I mean, there's something special about that. I mean, really special. Did you grow up in the area?
No, I didn't. I actually grew up down in Florida. I grew up on a big cattle ranch down in South and Central Florida. My dad ran 2 really big cattle ranches, and so we grew up, working cows and riding horses and rodeoing and riding bulls, and but we hunted, and that was, I didn't play a lot of sports. I played some sports, but when I was a kid, when I was done with school and homework, I was out hunting and fishing, and so from a young age, it's just been a part of who I am. And then, we had a lot of access to that, but unfortunately, a lot of those ranches and things and the people I grew up with, it's dwindling in Florida. And so I moved to Georgia in 1999 for my job, and we've loved it ever since here. So, didn't grow up here, but we absolutely do love it.
That's awesome. Very cool. How many boys you got?
I've got 2 boys, and I've got a 14-year-old daughter who's nice. Freshman in high school, which is a whole nother experience, and that's a whole nother topic besides tonight.
That's a different podcast, but you're right. That's
a different podcast.
Yes, very much so. Now, does the whole family get into hunting?
You know what? Yes and no. My wife is, I would say, very tolerant. She's not a hunter. But she gets it. She knows how passionate I am about it, and my boys are just eat up with it. My 12-year-old shot his first deer when he was 8 years old, and when he was 9, he shot his first 4.5-year-old South Carolina buck at 140 yards with a .243, and just hasn't stopped since. And this year we're actually going to start bow hunting. He shot some deer at the crossbow, and then my 10-year-old, he likes it. I don't think he's quite as passionate about it, but he definitely loves it and loves to fish. And my daughter, I have to say, I often ask her, if she's part of my DNA, because she's actually wants nothing to do with the hunting. So, but she gets it, but she's not into it like the boys are.
Not for her. Got it. Now, what brought you from Florida to Georgia?
You know what? My career, I work in the healthcare industry and the pharmaceutical industry, and so I have been doing this for about 18 years, and so I got a promotion from sales to a management job up here, and then have taken on a number of different positions over the years. So that's my full-time career, and then the TV stuff and all the hunting thing. We started a separate business about 5 years ago and some websites, and so it's my, I guess, second or third full-time job besides being a dad, and then my career in this.
Gotcha. That's awesome. So when did you first start hunting?
Wow.
I know, I'm bringing you back a long way.
You know what? You're bringing me back, but I can remember having sitting on a dike down in Deseret Ranch down in South Florida when I was probably 10 years old, carrying a Winchester 30-30,
nice.
Lever action, open sights, no scopes, and shooting hogs with my dad and brothers down there, probably starting at the age of 10 years old.
That's awesome. That's a great. I love the lever action 30-30s. You just got to love them, right?
Listen, shot my first deer with that, and we'll never forget it.
Yep. Yeah, it's just an all-American gun right there. Through and through.
No question.
All right. So you got into deer hunting when you were around 10. And what influences did you have in your life that introduced you to hunting in the first place?
Just growing up on a big cattle ranch, obviously it was there. It was a part of, what we did. It's interesting because the way that we hunted back then is so different than the way that we hunted now. I mean, my dad, he hunted but it was very reckless, I would say. There was not a lot of strategy and a lot of the things that you and I and the listeners put into the hunting today.
Yeah.
And, and we had success, but, I would look back and say, gosh, it's funny how we did things, but that's just the way it was back then. And so we hunted a lot for food, quite honestly. We didn't trophy hunt a lot. Seriously, we lived in a very small cattle ranch. A cattle house on a 30,000 acre cattle ranch, and
yep.
we worked cows, and that was, so we hunted more, quite honestly, for food, than we did for putting a big rack on the wall.
Gotcha. I think that's kind of a semi-common theme that you think back to how did you hunt with your family, and it's way different than you hunt today, for the most part.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. It's amazing how hunting kind of progresses from generation to generation and what you learn along the way, and look back at how your father did it or your uncles did it. You're like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. That's pretty funny. So you're in Georgia. What's the state of the deer herd in Georgia right now?
You know what? It's doing very well. We've got the Quality Deer Management Association headquartered in Bogart, Georgia, which is right outside of Athens, and obviously they have a big influence in what's happening here. So there's I would say a very good population. Now it's going to vary county to county, and there's quite frankly counties that have better populations and are managed differently than others. But you look in some of the suburban areas, there's a lot of deer, and there's some really good deer with great genetics and a lot of potential. And I've hunted all over the state, and so you got 2 bucks that's all you can shoot in Georgia, and so I believe it's managed very well. You can harvest some does, which I'm a big believer in. Me personally, I would rather shoot, does than a small buck, no matter where I'm at, if I'm going to, get some meat and, manage the population. So I think Georgia does a pretty darn good job of how they manage the buck herd as well as the does.
Gotcha. Very nice. Now, I want to get into some of your deer hunting techniques. I'd like to hear the story, if you wouldn't mind. Tell us the story behind your big Alberta buck.
Yeah, I'd love to. This was a first opportunity for us to get to Canada, and quite frankly, the co-host of the show, Ultimate Bow Hunting TV, is a guy that I grew up with and that I've hunted with, quite honestly, since I was, probably 13 years old. Bill Lawson, and he and I have always talked about going to Canada, and we had an opportunity to get there with a guy that we felt was a quality, guy. And so we were really excited because this place doesn't have a lot of hunters. He takes very few hunters, and he manages it very well. A lot of food, a lot of water. Obviously, there's a lot of cover there. And so then, we had a lot of opportunities this time of year. The deer are going to be somewhat predictable, but not predictable from a standpoint where they're going to go the same way every day. But they're, you got bachelor groups for the most part. They're going to hit the alfalfa. And so if you get the wind right, there's an opportunity to get them to get set up in the morning, and then you have opportunities in the evenings. So that's the biggest thing that we were really excited about, is that not a lot of pressure. That's really important for me, no matter where I hunt, as I think human pressure and hunting pressure sometimes is overlooked. And then, is the food there, and is there opportunities to hunt different stands based on the wind and, going and coming from bedding.
Gotcha. All right. I'm going to have Dusty kind of walk us through the hunt, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So where we at in Canada? Alberta?
Yeah, Alberta.
Alberta. What's the weather conditions like?
Yeah, the weather was absolutely perfect from a standpoint. It was it was 25 to 32 in the mornings. And then mid 70s in the afternoon. But what was unique when we were there is that we got about 2.5, 3 days of rain that was sporadic. And then sometimes it would get heavier than others, but just great, very comfortable conditions where deer are going to move even for that time of year. We saw deer having pictures at, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. So weather was outstanding.
Awesome. So are we hunting Alberta in a ground blind or in a stand?
You know what? We had the opportunity to hunt some of the bail blinds that they've got, but, we prefer to hunt out of a tree stand, but not opposed to a ground blind. It's just, I think it's all somewhat scenario based and, where you're going to be the most successful. So the first couple nights we were set up in a stand really that was, in a cut between a tree line in a bedding area of woods and a thicket, and they would come out of that thicket and really come through this little cut into the rape and the different, food plot, foliage that was there really heading to the alfalfa. So it was really to catch them coming through that cut. And then, in the mornings we would hunt really as they were coming off of the alfalfa, coming through the woods into the bedding area.
Right on. Is it, what kind of camouflage do you guys wear when you get out of Alberta?
You know what, we were wearing Mossy Oak Infinity, and I was wearing the new tree stand, and not the new, but the tree stand pattern, and I like that there because you got a lot of those spruce trees, and you have some of those other trees that have a really white and gray kind of trunk, and so it really blended in well up there in a different kinds of the trees and a lot of those different foliage and the spruce and different things that I felt blended in really well.
So Mossy Oak Breakup Infinity, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, Mossy Oak Breakup Infinity. And then, we also had the tree stand pattern, which, was popular a few years ago and then has kind of died out. And then this year, it's coming back a little bit more. As far as availability and some of the different apparel. And so, I had some of it and just felt that it would do well. Listen, I'm a believer that, there's not really one silver bullet, that if you can have a couple different patterns based on the environment that you're in, me personally, I like to have a couple different patterns based on where I'm at.
Kind of change it up a little bit.
Gotcha. Dusty, is that what the kind of pattern you bought the other day at the store?
Yeah, the Mossy Oak Breakup Infinity.
That's the same stuff. That stuff's amazing.
It really is. Been a few years since I really focal pointed on camouflage, and I went and dug pretty deep in Bass Pro Shop's camo section and pulled out 4 or 5 different brand names, and Mossy Oak, man, by far the leader in my eye. So we're in Alberta. We're hunting out of a tree stand. I'm assuming we're archery hunting. Is that correct?
Roger that. Definitely bow hunting.
And 20 in the mornings, going into 70 in the afternoons. That's great weather for Alberta, Canada. What time of day did you guys? What time of the morning did you guys get up to head out to the woods?
We were up at 4:30, and I'm a believer in I'm going to take the long way to get to my stand to not bust the deer. And so based on that little farm and the property, there's food everywhere, and those deer are going to be somewhat concentrated in that alfalfa. And so, we probably had a good 35-minute walk in the mornings to get to our stand, and we didn't drive. We chose to walk. And, we like to walk with minimal light, and we will cruise to get to where we were, take the long way around, and then slip into the stand. And, listen, when you got camera equipment and different things, and 2 people, it makes it a bit more challenging. And so if you leave yourself a little bit more time, take the long way, then, that extra effort many times will pay off to not bust those deer out of there.
Right. That's a great kind of a tip there, to take the long route and not mess up your hunt from the start.
Yeah, I mean, years ago I was pretty, when I first got into bow hunting, I was somewhat reckless, and you just kind of barrel in the woods and you barrel out. And for me now, I spend a lot of time and thought into entrance and exit routes. And, especially a big mature buck, if you educate them, coming in or going out, you're just making it harder on yourself to see that buck during daylight hours. And so, listen, it's never perfect, but if you can just put a little bit more thought into how you're going to get in and how you're going to leave, when you're going to leave, many times that can pay off for you and less educate a big mature animal.
Absolutely. So we've eased into the woods and it's breaking daylight. Tell us about the rest
breaking
of
daylight, and the thing about Alberta that was new for us, we all grown up and heard coyotes, but there's wolves there, and those wolves have a very different sound. And so that was something unique that we heard right out of the gate as the day was breaking, is you'd hear some of these big wolves howling, and they'd be solo, and it's definitely a different sound and vocalization than a coyote. So you'd hear that for a little bit, and then it'd break light. And you know what was different than, let's say hunting in Georgia is typically your deer movement this time of year is going to be first thing in the morning just because of the temperature. Well, you'd have to sit in the stand till 9, 10 o'clock in the morning because you'd have deer walk at literally 9:30 in the morning just because the conditions were so good, and they may be bedded down for longer and before they'd go to bed in the morning. And we saw actually our second morning in our morning setup, we saw what we called Hat Rack. He was a close to 180-inch mainframe 10 that just came down about 80 yards from us that second morning and never gave us a shot. But he just, about 9 o'clock was meandering through the woods, going to bed. And, so you needed to be willing to sit every morning till a good 10 o'clock.
Right on. So on that particular day that you shot your big Alberta buck, what was happening in the woods that day? Was it pretty active or was it slow? Tell us a little bit about how it all started.
I tell you what, it started, and there was a lot leading up to it because, guys, it was the last hunt of the trip, and we hear that, and this happened for us. It was our last evening hunt. We were leaving the next day, and leading up to it, the first 2 days were pretty good. And as I mentioned earlier, we'd heard wolves, and unfortunately, when wolves move into a particular area, deer movement shuts down. So our third and fourth day was minimal deer movement because of the wolves. And then that Thursday, it was wide open. And we were out there with Chris Brackett was there from Fear No Evil, and we had both set up some different stands, and he had shot a buck that Thursday night right on the alfalfa, and we saw where Bill and I were that Thursday evening. We saw another shooter buck, and Chris had seen two other bucks that Thursday night after he had shot his deer. And so that Friday, we decided to go ahead and hunt over that alfalfa, knowing that there were 3 shooter bucks and 2 of them hadn't been shot. And they weren't spooked. We didn't really mess with them. We were very, very careful. And so it was about 3 o'clock, and we were shooting the bow because in that alfalfa, you got some pretty wide open areas. We set up where they would typically transition and move in front of us about 30, 40 yards. But they could end up anywhere from, 20 to 50, 60 yards out there. And we were shooting a bow at about 3 o'clock, just at 40 and 50 yards, just to make sure we were dialed in and I was comfortable. And I saw deer starting to move at 3 o'clock. And I said to Bill, we need to get in the stand much earlier today. There was a front coming in. So we got to the stand at 4:30, and at 5 o'clock, based on how we're sitting. So if you guys can just imagine, we're sitting in a spruce tree. We got alfalfa, in front of us and then to our left and behind us. And then we got a cut, of woods in an open field from a hayfield that's going to come in where these deer should filter into our right, or they could come in straight in front of us in that big open area where there's rape and different stuff in there, and come straight down the wood line and cut in front of us. Well, way about 600 to 800 yards in front of us, I see 3 bucks cruise the tree line, not far from where we sat that first night I told you about. Well, they came across that tree line and they came dead in front of us, and it was that buck, and he was crab claw, and he had disappeared for about 6 days, and he wasn't seen that Thursday night. Of those 3 shooter bucks, he wasn't one of them. So he came out at 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he was with 2 younger bucks, and we watched him for 45 minutes feed out in that food area and food plot and all that rape and all that. And he finally eased his way down and was working his way down to us. So it was pretty cool to see a big 6.5-year-old, close to 170-inch deer for about 40 minutes work his way right to us.
But that made for some awesome footage.
The footage was awesome, and it gave me a little bit of time to get my heart rate right. And,
right.
Just think about the shot and what he might do. And there was a little pond area about 60 yards, if I was standing straight out, probably at my 10, 11 o'clock. And he worked his way down there with those 2 bucks, and he got in that grass in that area, which was probably a little marshy area, was about chest high, and he laid down. So he went in there because he just was winding, and he wasn't busting us, and we had the Ozonics going, and we had the wind and everything right. But he just, like a big mature buck does, he just took his time and he laid down, and you could tell he was just, his ears were moving and he was winding just to make sure everything was cool before he got into the alfalfa with the other does. And that was pretty neat to watch him do that. And then he popped up, and then the two smaller bucks cruised right in front of us at about 30 yards. And I said, Bill, that's money. I said, if he'll do that, we're in great shape. But of course not. He's going to go his own way. So he broke off from those two other deer, and he started quartering and walking to us, but eventually angling to the alfalfa. So that's when we had to make a decision, and right there is at about 54 yards. So, but he had a good angle, and he was coming, and it was go time.
Right on. So he's working his way into you, and you've watched him now for roughly 40-45 minutes come in. That's intense. What? Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Tell us about the shot once he gets in close enough to you and make the harvest shot.
Absolutely. So I had taken my time, and I think it's important, just when you have time to just relax and pick out some spots and just range. And I had taken that time to just pick some spots and range even before I knew where he was going to come. And when I saw him commit, then I had ranged, 2-3 spots. And then, we talked about it. And so the angle was good, even though, that's a little bit of a poke at 54 yards. I mean, I think the important thing is if you're comfortable in your equipment, and I also am a big believer in a certain type of broadhead that absolutely paid dividends on this hunt, is that you can make those kind of shots very comfortably. And so I wasn't worried whether it was 30 or 55 yards. It was just making sure it was a good angle and that, compensating that I know the deer's going to drop. So he's coming. And he's at 55 yards, and the way we were set up, Bill's only literally got about 3 more seconds and before he's going to go past the spruce tree, and we can't film him. And so, I asked Bill if he was on him, and he said, "You shoot him now or I'm going to lose him out of frame." And so I grunted at him, and he stopped and just kind of looked down a little bit, and then I squeezed it off. And it was a good quarter, but what happened was when I shot him, he not only dropped, but he dropped and turned right away from the shot. So the shot ended up hitting him a little bit back, but the quartering angle, and it was a downward angle because we were pretty high in the tree, just smoked him. And so it caught back lung and liver, passed through at 54 yards. And so when he wheeled around and was running, he had blood pouring out of him, and we watched him run for about 60 yards in front of us, and then he slowed down, and he got the dizzy walk, and he fell over right in front of us at about 80 yards, and it was pretty awesome to see him go down like that.
Awesome. What kind of broadheads were you using?
So I was using a Swacker, and I'm a big believer in a 2-inch or just a wide cutting broadhead like that. And, everybody's got their favorites, but I'll tell you why I like a broadhead that has that wide cutting diameter like that, because even in a less than perfect shot, you're going to really get that pass through, and you're going to open that deer up and get enough of a opening and the blood trail, and it's going to do what it needs to do. And so I honestly think that that's a big reason why, we saw that deer fall over in as short a period of time as we did. The deer was going to be done, no matter what, but, a less than 2-inch, he might have run a lot longer, and it may not have cut enough inside that quickly. And so, I'm just a big believer in that 2-inch expandable kind of broadhead, because if you get it in the wheelhouse anywhere, even if it's less than perfect, it's going to do its job.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't agree to that more. What kind of bow are you shooting?
On that I was using a PSE Full Throttle.
Gotcha. Pushing a carbon arrow, pushing the broadhead.
Yeah, it's a PSE X-Weave carbon arrow that's set up for that bow. And and again, it's all about your equipment and getting it set up. Not every bow is going to be, or not every arrow is going to be perfect for every bow. And, it's the weight of the arrow to that bow and all those things I think are important. And so, that bow was set up to shoot, well over 340 feet per second, the way we had it set up with that arrow. So, shooting at 50 yards, is not a chore, quite honestly, for that bow. And we got a clean pass through at 54 yards, and that's what really helped do part of the job. Right on.
So after you make a great shot, how excited was you when you walked up on that buck?
Oh, listen, so first off, to get to see a 6.5-year-old for 45 minutes, and to have him come in to be able to make the shot, and to see him run off and fall in front of you on camera, that in itself was pretty awesome. And then to be able to get down there and get our hands on him was, it's a great feeling. I don't care how many deer that you shoot, to get your hands on an animal is awesome. And then to do that with a 6.5-year-old, whether he was 190 or 150, to get your hands on a 6.5-year-old set of horns is pretty cool, because you don't outfool that guy very much. And we caught it right, and we made the decision to get in early based on the conditions and what was happening. And if we would have got in the normal time, we would have, quite frankly, blown that deer out of the field and probably never seen him again. So to get on him and to put our hands on that big set of bone was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. How'd you guys get him out?
Yeah, well, we didn't have to get him out of the woods because he was laying about 80 yards in front of us in the alfalfa. So that was, didn't require a lot of tracking. And we just pulled the gator up and we loaded him up and took him to the shed to skin him out. We got our tag on him and got him out.
What did that buck gross score?
You know what? We're waiting to dry. He's I would say right now he's gross score 165 to 170. I've measured him, but I've got somebody else who's going to come. And the reason I'm saying that is he's got such a unique front that he's literally got a crab claw that has just got so much mass that it's such a unique set of fronts that I've never measured anything like this. So there could be 5 to 10 inches in there either way based on how somebody wants to measure him. But he's a good 165 to 170.
Awesome. That's a great buck.
Yeah, good deer. Proud of him. Again, what I'm proud of too is just his age and his monarch, just to be a big mature buck like that. I'm as excited about his age than even just about his number of inches. Absolutely.
I think awesome. anybody that hears a story will agree with you. It's an honor to take a big mature whitetail like that. They don't get big because they're, dummies in the woods. They're pretty smart. They're hard to hunt, and it's a challenge to put a kill shot on a mature buck, and that's very rewarding.
No question. No question. I've shot a lot of deer, but that one will definitely go in the books as one that I will be absolutely most proud of, just the way things, just how they transpired and how everything unfolded. And, to get a shot on him like that and to see him fall over in front of us was, pretty special.
Yeah, phenomenal. Jay, what do you got for Brian?
All right, Brian, you've been hunting for a long time. You've trial and error. Let's break down some of your most influential or the best hunting tips that you think you've learned over the years through trial and error. What's your number one?
Number one is don't hunt if the conditions aren't right, and that's hard to do. Cause again, I grew up when you're going to go hunt, you're going to go hunt. And for a lot of us who are busy, and listen, I've got 3 kids, I coach, and if you got a day, to go hunting, you want to go. But if the conditions aren't right, I think you do yourself more harm than good by being disciplined. Now, listen, if you're just out shooting does and you're just going to shoot, then I don't think it makes as much of a difference. But if you're hunting a particular buck that's 3.5 years or older, I think you've got to be disciplined to the wind, especially in just if the conditions aren't right, don't hunt. But when they are, do everything you can to get in the woods because you got a very good chance of killing that deer.
Okay, let's break that down a little bit more. When you say the conditions are right or aren't right, what are you referring to?
So number one is the wind. I think, everybody's got to, factor that in, and listen, we use Ozonics and we use scent lock and we use different things and sprays, and they're effective. But I still, am a believer that you got to get the wind in your favor the best you can because things change. And if you educate a deer, then it's harder and harder to hunt that animal. Then the next thing is really the temperature and, is there a pressure coming in, a front coming in, those kind of things. I mean, if the wind's right and you got a change in temperature, there's a front coming in, then I'm out there. And then I love to hunt in the rain. And sometimes the nastier, the better. And so, so if it's nasty and the deer are going to be moving, I'm willing to get out there and to stick it out because I've shot a lot of deer in really snowy, nasty, or even rainy conditions when you wouldn't think deer are moving, but they're on their feet because either it's going to get nastier or it's been bad for a while and they're hungry and they got to eat.
Gotcha. I like that. It's a great tip. All right. How about a second tip if you had to have a number two?
Number two is entrance and exit into your setup. Plan and think about how you're going to get in and how you're going to get out. You know, the other thing that, you know, I did back in 2007 when I shot that big Georgia buck, you know, I probably overthought it, like I was planning a war, you know, and the strategy and how I'm going to get in and out and where I'm going to walk and all this stuff. And I tell you, it paid off because I hunted that deer one time and then I backed off for 10 days and I only went in a certain way that I knew I would not get busted based on the wind and how I could get in. And then if I needed to slip out, I could slip out even if he was close and I would never bust him. So I would just encourage anybody, you know, to think about your entrance and exit routes. I think it can pay off big for you.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. Now you mentioned something in your tip number one. You said you're a believer in Ozonics. Now we're going to have one of the guys from Ozonics on to talk more about this, but what is it about that product that you like the most?
What if you take a little time and you just read about it, you really see that it's not, you know, kind of a witch trick or just a product that's just a gimmick. It really does have some science to it, and it takes your human scent oxygen molecules and turns them into ozone molecules, or the O3 and molecules, and those oxygenated molecules are undetected by big game. And so one, I like that in that it helps to minimize that scent factor. But the other thing is that when it's in the tree, you can adjust it on a shifting wind. So if your wind shifts, the way that you set it up in the tree and the arm, you can shift it so that way it's constantly helping you, in those scenarios that might be variable. And so, you know, I'm a big believer in it, and they've done some things this year with some accessories that make it really easy and quiet to put in the tree, get it in and off, and so, there is a fan to it, and some people, feel like, well, that's noisy. Listen, I've used it enough that it's not. I had deer all over us in Alberta and where we've hunted, and it doesn't booger them up. So I'm just a believer in the product just because I've seen it work,
Gotcha.
Not because I believe it on TV, because I've seen it work.
Gotcha. We get a lot of questions about that on our Facebook page, and just curious. People are curious about it, so we're going a little more in depth with a show dedicated to just that product because so many people have inquired. So thank you for sharing that with us. We were kind of wondering. So let's talk about Ultimate Bow Hunting TV. Why make the transition from a hobby into a television show?
You know what? We started a website years ago called Stickum Archery, and we did that. We had a blog, and we had a lot of resources, and then we started getting into, and we had products and things that we sold, and then we started getting more and more into the video side of things, and we actually had manufacturers wanting us to do some of the video reviews of products and place it on the website, and then I just fell in love with the storytelling side of the videography piece of it. And then we started videoing like a lot of people are doing. And then as we got into it, we started getting introduced to more and more people. And I just felt like, I had a passion around it and I wanted to learn and get better. And so that turned into from just kind of complimenting the website to, quite frankly, doing that full time as to what we do in the industry. And so we decided about 2 years ago to start an online show. And then this past year, we turned all of that to the TV side of things. And we still do a lot of online stuff, but I just love when you push play and you're telling a story through video. There's a lot of passion behind it. And to me, I love telling a story, and that's just what drives me to do it.
Gotcha. Do you think you'll include your sons in this whole endeavor at some point?
Yes, because they're already included. So
nice. This
past year, last year I filmed my son. He shot a doe and a buck, one night here in Georgia, right by the house. We didn't get the shot on the Big 8, and he ended up shooting a cull 5 buck that a 5-point that was a 3.5-year-old. And you know what, just to see him track that deer and to film it and to just watch him do it was awesome. And then we were in Kansas this year, and he shot a 4.5-year-old giant eastern with the crossbow on the ground at 8 yards. And that was some of the best footage that I personally ever experienced. And trying to call the bird in myself, coach him up, film it, and do it all together was something that I'll cherish more than probably that big Alberta buck. So, yes, my boys are a big part of it and will continue to be.
That's awesome. What do you think the state of the hunter is in the U.S. right now? Are we under the gun? Are we threatened in any way?
You know what, I think, in some cases and in some states, I think they are. And I think a big part of it is just continual education, and I think opportunities to get out there. And I think this is where TV has a place, and I think where some of the TV industry and the host, need to welcome, people and encourage people to get out there, and kids and help dads and sons find opportunities to do it. And it's not always easy. So, I mean, the hunting industry is growing, but I would say, from the research that I've done and the things that I've read is that the hunters are not growing to the pace that, let's say, the industry is, from a product standpoint. Lots of new products, all kinds of neat stuff, all that, a lot of TV shows, but I think we need to do a better job of getting more dads and sons involved.
Gotcha. I've heard reports that we're almost a dying breed because we're not introducing more into the sport. And I'm assuming that hunting has meant something deeper than just going into the field and doing a hunt. It's got to have a deeper meaning to keep you in it. Because just going out and shooting something isn't going to keep you in it. But so you have to have an emotional tie to this thing that brings you back, probably your childhood almost. This is a psychological thing. Where do you think that we're starting to lose that a little bit? For me, I grew up in experiencing it, and I knew at a very young age that hunting was going to be part of my life no matter what I did. If I lived in New York City and did some job in some ivory tower, I was still going to be hunting somewhere doing something. And so, but unfortunately, a lot of people don't have access to growing up in the outdoors like I did. And so for me, well, my boys are not going to be on a horse riding cow or working cows or riding bulls and all that. I still make every effort to get them in the outdoors as much as I can. So my job is I talk to people about hunting. So there's so many things that go into it beyond, as you said, just the kill. And I think, you just got to talk to people and help them understand. And it's funny, I'm kind of the black sheep of my neighborhood of where I live, and I'm the hunter. Nice. And I'm the guy that, people call if they have a problem of a rodent in their house or whatever. But I talk about it and they're intrigued when they come down to my trophy room and they see, a 10-foot gator in there, and I'm talking to the moms and explaining it, and they're watching the videos. And we've had more football moms and stuff follow our TV show on Facebook or wherever because they're like, I had no idea that this was about. And so it's just involving them and they love it. And right. So, it's just educating. That's awesome. Very cool. All right. So that's the state of the hunter. What's the state of the whitetail population in the country? We talked a little bit about Georgia. Are there any threats, like maybe chronic wasting disease, anything like that you think needs to be taken care of overall? Do we need an intervention of some sort?
Well, listen, I'll give you a little bit of my insight, but I'm not going to profess to be, a biologist or speak out of school, because there are people that are far more educated and study it across the country than I do. But my perspective is this. I think, there are diseases and there are certain pockets in Montana and the Midwest and Nebraska and places that have gotten hit really hard with some of these, chronic wasting diseases and other diseases. And I think it's definitely taken an impact. And so it's how you manage that. So it's going to take 2-3 years for some of these pockets to rebound. And what I have seen from a lot of the people that I've spoken to is not hunting or not harvesting some of those deer, that next year or the year after to let them build up. And so if you've got a 3.5-year-old that made it through, man, you don't want to shoot that deer if you can help it, because you need that deer, to continue the genetics and all of that. So I think it's the discipline for some of these ranch owners or outfitters to not shoot some of these bucks in these areas. Or if you've got a very low doe population, don't overshoot the does. Let them get bred and be disciplined for a few years. So I think there are many states where the herd is in very good shape and maybe even overpopulated. And I do think that there are some areas where it has been hit hard. But from the people that I've talked to, they seem to be very aware of it, and they're doing the things needed to be disciplined. So while it might have been rough last year, it might be rough this year, but the next year and the year after, it's going to be back in really good shape.
Nice. Very nice.
I don't know if I answered your question, but it's just a little bit of perspective from my standpoint.
I want to get your perspective on the insights there. Dusty, any other questions for Brian?
No, I think that we covered a lot of things, and Brian, I like your outlook on the things that are very similar to our outlook, and we wish you the best of luck this season.
Hey, listen, I appreciate the opportunity to do it. We're pretty excited. We're going to be hitting it pretty hard this fall, and hopefully trying to throw down some good footage and get some good deer on the ground, and then definitely be hunting with my boys and trying to experience that will be something I'm looking forward to as well.
Very cool. All right, Brian, tell us how everybody can reach you through your social media channels, all that kind of stuff, because I know you got some really good stuff going on.
Yeah, absolutely. One, we've got a pretty robust website. It's called ultimatebowhuntingtv.com, and on there we rerun a lot of our previously aired episodes. We've got some how-to articles and video reviews of some of the products and some of the things that we use out in the field that we believe in. And then our Facebook page is facebook.com, and then it's Ultimate Bow Hunting TV. And on there, we're pretty engaged. We run an 8-minute episode, which is nice. So if you miss our show on TV or on our website, we rerun kind of the best 8 minutes of each episode. That way it's, fast and furious and entertaining. And then, we do a lot of giveaways and just stay engaged and try to, interact as much as we can. And then finally, we've got our TV show is on the Hunt Channel on Dish Network, Channel 266 on Sunday evenings at 6:30.
Very cool.
Eastern.
Excellent. Well, we'll be tuning in. We'll be checking out your site. We've already gone and liked it from the Big Buck Registry and from my personal page. So we're going to keep it up. We're going to share it on our page because we think you got some cool stuff. And hopefully get you a few more followers this season and get you tuned into your TV show and keep them coming, man. They're just awesome.
Hey, listen, I appreciate you guys being as passionate about the whitetail and the hunting and bow hunting as you guys are, and taking the time to talk with me and share a little bit of story. So, listen, greatly appreciated, and wish you guys a ton of luck this season as well.
Well,
awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, Brian, it's been great, but thanks again for joining us on the Big Buck Podcast.
My pleasure.
I just love listening to bow hunters. I don't know about you, Dusty.
Oh, hours, hours. Definitely listen to them for hours. Some of the tips that you pick up is phenomenal.
I love gun hunting, don't get me wrong, but over the years, as I've turned from a young man into an older man.
A real old man.
Whatever. I really enjoy the bow hunting more than I ever have in my entire life.
It's rewarding.
It is. And I guess when you finally realize that you can pretty much have full success as a bow hunter and complete, utter fulfillment and just happiness from a bow and bow hunting, then you do that. And that's kind of where I'm starting to get to. I think Chip City said that once, too, in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian got kind of choked up telling the story, and that to me is what the Big Buck Podcast is all about. Hearing that story like it was reliving the moment. It was like he just choked up telling the story because he was excited. He's still excited about it. That's phenomenal in my eyes. I really enjoy listening to a hunter's story like Brian's, and it was a bow hunt, and it really, really. He'll remember that for life, and we will too by hearing the story.
Mm-hmm. I have always, going back to when I was young enough to remember how I felt when I heard a deer hunting story. I just, to this day, I still get the same emotions. I still think about it. I almost engage like I'm that hunter as they're recreating it. And darn well that when you are telling your own deer story, that you are reliving that moment in time is like a time capsule. And you're painting a picture for the listener, and that's what we're trying to capture right here on the Big Buck Registry and start a museum of hunting stories. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and we got one heck of a Rolodex of hunting stories.
Oh, some of the finest storytellers in the land have been on the Big Buck podcast, and we're just adding to it because you know what? There are a million great deer hunting stories out there, and not everybody tells a great story, but we're going to help you do it. So if you've got a great deer story to tell, we want to know. You know, jump on Facebook, shoot us an email, write us a letter if you want. Give us a phone call. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear about your deer hunting experience. You know what time it is, Dusty?
I do know what time it is.
Me too. It's time for the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week. What do you got for us this week?
Tip of the week: go check out the new camouflage. If you're a hunter,
I know where you're going with this.
If you're a hunter that's had the same riggings for years, you know, and I'm guilty of it, Jay.
So I am a multiple guilt. Yeah, I'm in guilt jail right now.
I never,
camo jail.
I go. You know, I'm going to tell a story here that I go to Bass Pro. It's pretty local for me, Cincinnati, Ohio. But I go there and I often just pass right by the camo section because, my stuff works. I'm not going to spend the money. Well, I went down and I decided I was going to take a look at the camo. It was time that I upgraded. So I get in there, Jay. Oh, my goodness. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. The camo has come a long, 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 long way.
It has. You sent me that picture of that thing. It looked 3D and it wasn't.
It's unbelievable. It's not, you used to see the camo on some that was shiny and you knew it wasn't going to work.
Right.
And probably back in 2005, I found a set that was perfect. I liked it. It just had the right colors for my trees where I'm at, and I've been sticking with that. I went down to Bass Pro. I picked out Mossy Oak Breakup Infinity. Oh my goodness,
amazing stuff! And we're not. They're not our sponsors or anything like that. You just like this stuff.
I really like this stuff. It blew my mind on how nice this camouflage detail has really, and over the years has come a long way.
It was amazing, that picture. I need to get out to the store and go check some stuff out because a lot of stuff I have that I bought that, like you're discussing, my stuff is like bleached out almost. Like it's not even camo anymore. It's like wearing a white sheet.
Right. It's just outdated. It's wore out.
Wore out. You've tired.
You got the life out of it. But that's my tip of the week. Go check out the new camo. It's phenomenal.
Awesome, man. That's a very good tip. Good stuff. So how can we reach you over at Chubby Tines Outdoors?
Well, I know it's not quite the empire that you're about to tell us about, but Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors, and look me up at Dusty Hunt Neck right there on Facebook.
Just because I have more to say doesn't mean it's an empire.
It's an empire of big buck, and more big buck. Jay, everywhere. How can the people, everywhere, Big Buck.
Yes, I love that.
How can the people get in touch with you at the Big Buck Registry?
Okay, let's start.
Here we go.
Ready?
Ready.
Here we go. All right, BigBuckRegistry.com. That's our website. Facebook.com/Big Buck Registry. Facebook. Twitter is Twitter.com/Big Buck Registry. YouTube is YouTube.com/Big Buck Registry. Give us a call at 724-613-2825. Give us some feedback about this show, anything you like, don't like, anything you like or don't like about our Facebook posts. Certainly we've had a few of those recently. And let's see, what else we got? If you like this show, please, if wherever you've heard it, go check out iTunes or Stitcher and leave us a review about the show and give us a 5-star if you could. If not, hey, we understand we're not perfect. But if you could, go to iTunes, subscribe to the channel, and listen to the show. They're all free. Great content. We try to deliver great content to you every single week. Tell your friends, tell your hunting buddies. The podcast, it's medium. If you've listened to it, you understand. But there are many, many, many people that have not heard this yet, and they just introduced on the iOS 8 on the Apple devices. It's a native application, the podcast app. So everybody is going to be able to listen to a podcast app or a podcast on Apple because now you cannot delete the icon, which is kind of cool for us. But we think we've got some good stuff, and there are a lot of other good podcasts out there that deal with the outdoors. So if you're an outdoor enthusiast, if you're a hunter, check out all the amazing free content that we're trying to deliver and that others are delivering too. And tell all your buddies. So I think that's it, man.
Tell your grandma. Your grandma's going to enjoy us.
Yeah, we have some grandmothers that listen.
Absolutely.
Yes. Linda.
We have some hunting grandmas that listen.
I would be willing to bet that actually I don't even know if she's a grandmother yet. I was thinking about Tiffany's mother, but I don't know if she's a grandmother, so I'm not going to put her in that category. But my mother listens on occasion, even though she really doesn't like hunting. That's the way it goes.
My mother listens.
Nice. My
mother listens for sure.
That's awesome.
Oh, you and Jay and yourself are just doing so great.
Is that really the way she sounds?
Well, yeah.
That's funny. Maybe we should get your mom on the show.
Let's do it.
All right. I would do that. I have a lot of questions.
Oh, boy.
About you.
Maybe that's a Hunt Neck podcast.
Yeah, it might be. Well, man, I think that's a wrap. We've had a great time. Thanks to Brian Stevens for joining us and really filling us in on some bow hunting tips and tricks and sharing his passion with us on the Big Buck Podcast. I'm Jay Scott.
And I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. See you next week.
Can't wait.